From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! We're broadcasting live from Copenhagen. It's Climate Countdown.
Talk as much as we want about debt, and we can talk as much about as we want about reparations, but they're going to laugh at us until there is some movement muscle behind those concerns, behind those demands, and that's our task.
From the streets to the suites of what some might consider the Bella of the Beast. Today, we look at the major protests planned outside the UN Climate Summit here in Copenhagen, yes, at the Bella Center. We'll hear from Naomi Klein and longtime protest organizer Lisa Fithian, who'll take us on an underground tour of Copenhagen's activist spaces, including a convergence space raided by the police 2 days ago.
There are many different protests with different themes each day of the week. Many people that have come from around the world that are, say, on the outside, are working under a banner system change, not climate change, because we're very clear that everything the UN is talking about and the system of capitalism is not going to shift the problem. And part of the real power force behind that is the corporations.
We'll also look at Ecuador's efforts to combat climate change by getting wealthy nations to pay Ecuador to keep its oil in the ground. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting live in Copenhagen, where the Obama administration is coming under criticism for refusing to acknowledge a climate debt to poorer countries suffering the brunt of global warming. This week, U.S. climate negotiator Todd Stern categorically rejected calls for climate reparations to developing countries. On Thursday, Bolivia climate negotiator Angela Navarro responded in an address before the Alternative Summit Climate Forum.
Whatever amount of money you give me, it will never, and I repeat, it will never compensate a single glacier that will be lost in Bolivia, a single species that will be lost in one of our rainforests. This is not about money because we are not beggars. We are just asking for reparation by developed countries so they pay us their debt.
In other news from Copenhagen, ocean scientists have released a report showing the world's seas are growing increasingly acidic from storing the main greenhouse gases causing global warming. Carol Turley of the Plymouth Marine Laboratory said oceans are seriously threatened unless emissions are reduced.
The oceans have already taken up 25% of the CO2 since the Industrial Revolution because of its vastness. And when you add CO2 to seawater, it becomes an acid, a mild acid. So the oceans in the last 200 years have become 30% more acidic, and that's lowering the pH. The projections are that by 2060, it will become 120%.
In Norway, thousands of people took to the streets of Oslo Thursday as President Obama accepted the Nobel Peace Prize. Obama used his acceptance speech to defend the escalation of the Afghan war, calling it a just use of force. U.S. peace activist Cindy Sheehan addressed a crowd of marchers in Oslo.
How dare the committee give the Peace Prize, which will be forever known now as Peace Prize,
Meanwhile, in New York, dozens of people marched in a parallel rally against Obama's Nobel Prize. The demonstrators carried mock coffins as they walked from the United Nations to a military recruiting station in Times Square.
I mean, he kind of rehashed the just war argument, and it's something that I think is kind of offensive, personally, to try to paint a military effort where people are going to be dying in terms of peace and in terms of, you know, positive thinking. It doesn't make any sense, I don't think.
You can go to our website at democracynow.org for our coverage of Obama's Nobel speech from Thursday's broadcast. New details have surfaced about the private military firm Blackwater's extensive role in U.S. operations abroad. The New York Times is reporting Blackwater forces have taken part in armed CIA raids in Iraq and Afghanistan. Blackwater said to have played a central role in almost daily snatch-and-grab operations in Iraq between 2004 and 2006. Former Blackwater guards say they also assisted CIA rendition flights, transporting prisoners for imprisonment and torture abroad. The guards say their involvement was so extensive that it became difficult to distinguish Blackwater operations from those of the CIA or U.S. military. In Pakistan, the 5 U.S. citizens arrested earlier this week are being accused of seeking to join militant groups to fight U.S. troops in Afghanistan. The 5 young men were arrested after their families reported them missing in Northern Virginia last week. Pakistani police say the men told interrogators they came to Pakistan to engage in jihadist activity. Ecuador is accusing the U.S. of involvement in Colombia's 2008 attack on FARC rebels in Ecuadorian territory. The cross-border bombing killed more than 20 people, including civilians. In a new report, the Ecuadorian government says U.S. military officials helped plan the attack from the Manta air base in Ecuador. Ecuador ended U.S. operations at the base earlier this year. Egypt has begun constructing a new border wall to further seal off the Gaza Strip. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz reports Egypt is installing an underground wall to block tunnels used for smuggling goods into Gaza. The hunger-striking Western Sahara activist Aminatou Haidar is calling on the Obama administration to pressure the Moroccan government to allow her to return home. Known as the Sahrawi Gandhi, Haidar has been on a hunger strike for nearly 4 weeks since Moroccan officials denied her entry into Western Sahara, where she lives. Morocco has demanded Haidar recognize Moroccan sovereignty over her homeland and apologize to the king. On Thursday, Haidar held a news conference at the Spanish airport, where she's been confined since last month.
The Spanish government has to give importance to human rights and change its attitude and defend those interests which are above those of the government. Nobody can push me or feed me against my will.
Haidar went on to issue a plea to President Obama, saying U.S. involvement would sway the Moroccan government to allow her return. A federal judge has declared the Pentagon in contempt of court for failing to videotape a Guantanamo prisoner who's challenging his detention. The military had been ordered to record Mohammed al-Adahi when he testified from Guantanamo in June. The judge had said Adahi's testimony should eventually be made public. The Justice Department's challenging a court ruling ordering Adahi's release for a lack of evidence against him. Patient rights advocates are criticizing a loophole in the Senate health care reform bill that would allow insurance companies to limit health care benefits even for seriously ill patients. An earlier version of the bill had banned the annual caps, but it's since reappeared as the bill moves through committee. On Thursday, single-payer activists protested at Senate offices nationwide against the Democrats' latest agreement to abandon the public option. 9 people were arrested at the New York offices of Democratic Senator Charles Schumer. The Justice Department has announced a settlement with the mining giant ASARCO for the cleanup of more than 80 polluted sites in 19 states. ASARCO will pay $1.79 billion to settle a series of claims. It's believed to be the largest environmental bankruptcy settlement in U.S. history. And Howard Zinn's best-selling book, A People's History of the United States, is headed to television this week. First published